You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by Nax. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
85% of the population says they have low self-esteem. That means, odds are, you're one of them. And that affects what you do in your job and what you do in your life. We're going to talk a little bit about confidence today. So joining us to talk about confidence is Juan Bendaña. He is a keynote speaker, and he recently spoke at the Connexus annual meeting to great acclaim. So we're going to dive in a little bit more to that. Thanks for joining us today, Juan.
Jeff, Chrissy, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So I started out with this stat. There were a couple things I saw from your presentation, and that was one stat that was brought out. Let's talk about this confidence of crisis of confidence. That's, I guess, the right way to say it. That's one of your stats. What do you take away from that stat?
Yeah, I think we're living in a time right now that gives us more reason to doubt ourselves than it gives us reason to feel confident about ourselves. And confidence is really made up of two things, not to get too technical right away, but it is made up of self-esteem, which is the way you see yourself, and self-efficacy, which is how good you are at something, your ability. And the times we're living in right now, with how fast things are moving, with how uncertain the future is, it's given us so many reasons as to feel like we can't handle it all. And some people will call it overwhelm. Some people will call it feeling burnt out. Some people will call it feeling it's just too much to handle. I feel stressed. But I really think that it's a confidence issue. It's not about trying to get things to slow down. It's not about trying to predict exactly what's going to happen in the future, because, by the way, I think that's impossible. I think it's about how do we build the most confident version of ourselves that can handle any version of the future. And I think that starts by understanding that we're living in times, especially with social media, especially with pressures from family, from friends, from colleagues, from feeling like we need to progress in our careers, progress in our businesses, that everything is kind of testing us. Like, our confidence is tested constantly, and we need to be able to rise to the occasion, which is why I kind of dedicated not only my keynote, but my entire body of work to this question of how do we feel more confident. So I think it is, like, Jeff, you're totally right. It is a confidence crisis that we're living in right now, because people consistently are doubting themselves and feel like they aren't enough, and feel like they're going to be judged, and feel like they're not going to be able to handle it. And I've kind of taken the approach of saying that you can, and to sharing with people how they can do that.
One of the things that I remember you mentioning along this conversation was the coexistence of fear and courage, which I thought was just a really cool thing. I don't know if you can talk a little bit more about that. I think it kind of leads into where some people are feeling exactly how you just described.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that we've made in modern personal growth is telling people to step outside of their comfort zones. Because what most people do is they take a single step. It's very scary. They hesitate. They doubt who they are. They think they're going to be rejected. And then they step right back in. So they're doing a little dance. And people think, and we're given just overcome your fears. It's not that easy, and actually impossible to do, because the research shows, a study done at Pepperdine University found that fear was reported to coexist with courage. Meaning in the brain, it is they coexist. They are one and the same. So you can't actually wait to feel ready, to feel like there is no fear, to feel like you're perfectly qualified to do it. And a conversation we actually had at Connexus with someone in the audience was asking, how do I overcome and deal with imposter syndrome? I'm getting into these rooms, into these higher level conversations, and I don't feel like I'm the right person for it. And the solution isn't to wait until you're ready. The solution is to practice courage. What does that look like? That looks like having, I call it calendar courage. So scheduling moments within your week, your month, your year, where you're practicing, like if you're nervous about speaking in front of your team or a group, go do that. Yeah. If you're nervous about stepping onto that new stage or stepping into that new role, volunteer, sign up. So I totally think it is looking at it as, oh, my goal is to build a better relationship with fear, not try and make it go away entirely.
Yeah. In a day ago, I looked at I think it was your Instagram or your LinkedIn, and in all caps, it says like, your goals do not matter. And I was like, oh, okay, he's serious. What's this about? And, I 100% agree with what you were saying, that, sometimes I think you kind of have to, build the ship while you're flying it, or else you're never going to get there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think also on that point, because some people are like, wait, your goals don't matter? Wait, I just set these awesome goals for 2024.
You just asked me what my goals are for the next 5 years. Come on.
And beyond, what's going on? And I think that what matters way more than the goals that you set is the actions that you take in pursuit of them. It is not about having a nice vision board on your wall or setting goals at the beginning of the year, because that's the easy part to do. The difference comes from saying, where do I want to be a year from now? Okay, that's a goal. Now, what would that person do today? I think confidence is nothing more than defining, what would the most confident version of myself do, be like? How would they behave? How would they show up in the world? How would they communicate? How would they interact? And then start doing that now. That's the fastest road to confidence. Saying that person would go to the gym. That person would wake up a little earlier. That person would actually say hi to that barista that they think is cute and ask them on a date. That person would do things current you would never do. Right. I think that's the shortcut.
Yeah. And things like, I want to run a marathon by the end of the year. Well, the goal for the week should not be, I'm going to do 50 miles a week. It's, I'm going to walk to the next light post, and then I'm going to run until I can't. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to walk again. And then eventually over time, you just stop walking.
Absolutely. I think it really comes down to what you do, not only every single day, but what kind of person are you becoming? Like, ask yourself at the end of the day, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of business owner do I want to be? What kind of team member do I want to be? What kind of father do I want to be? What kind of sister or brother do I want to be? And then how would that person live their day? A lot of times you see, especially in the rise of social media, these like 30-day challenges or 75 hard or all of these things where it's like you have 60 days of 2 workouts a day, 30 minutes of reading, 10 pages of journaling, absolutely no joy. And then what happens, and what happened to a lot of friends of mine that did that during this whole craze that happened over the past few years, is that they did the 75 days or they did the 60 days or they did the 30 days. And then on day 31, they had a tub of ice cream.
That's their reward.
Or on day 76, they slept in until noon because they had the habit of waking up at 5 a.m. I think this is the biggest mistake that a lot of people run into, is that with these goals that they set of like 30-day challenges, short sprints, the goal becomes to cross the finish line, not the transformation.
Right.
The goal becomes to let me finish the race when that was never the goal. The goal is to build a new habit. A habit is ingrained in an identity. An identity is not something you finish after 26.2 miles. An identity is something you live into past the 75 days. So I always tell people, like, listen, don't focus on the 30-day challenge. Don't focus on the New Year's resolution. Focus on who do you want to be in a year from now, and what could you see yourself doing for 3 years every day? Yeah.
We'll talk about athletes in a second. We've kind of teed up that subject. We're running marathons and all that. And you've spoken in front of hundreds of thousands of folks and worked with many athletes. We'll get there in a second. For those of us who aren't elite athletes, I want to get back to the problem. 85% lack confidence. So that manifests itself in business where you may have you may have a vocal fry, you may have something else that just demonstrates you're not confident with the things you're talking about, even though you may be. And that can hurt you. And how do you advance in your career? In our business, convenience stores serve roughly 160 million transactions a day, kind of the half the U.S. population. So it's important to be forward facing. And then you come home and everybody has a family on some level. So it's important to also feel pretty good about relationships there. What are some of the manifestations when you aren't confident? How does that adversely affect life at home and in the office?
Oh, it's everything. It's you operating at a fraction of who you could be. You're less, and the research shows you are less engaged, you are less energetic, you're less focused, you have less attention when you lack confidence. When you're more confident, and the studies show that the higher the confidence, the better the leader, because you're more engaged, you're more present, you're showing up more. And this is like, I think what we often miss is that every single person has a version of themselves that is the most confident. And I'm not saying that as trying to be overly motivational. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. Every single person has an area of their life that they are absolutely confident in. Even if it's, I have absolute confidence that I know how to tie my shoes effectively, that I know how to make the bed the way that I make it, that I know how to cook an amazing grilled cheese. And by the way, I do. It's unbelievable. Sourdough, mm-hmm. blueberry, but I digress. Everyone has the feeling and has known the feeling of feeling absolutely confident. So there's a method and sort of the start of, okay, if someone's listening to this and they're like, how do I build confidence? How do I do it? It's first identifying what are the areas of your life where you feel absolutely confident. What are those areas? Because everyone has at least one, even if it's a microcosm of your life. Everyone has at least one. What is that area? And then you ask the question of how do you see yourself in that context? Because a lot of people have unbelievable confidence in business, but no confidence in relationships. A lot of people have unbelievable confidence in relationships, but feel like they can't even speak in the board meeting. So for me personally, I was terrified of speaking in front of groups. I had zero confidence whatsoever. So I had to borrow confidence from other areas of my life. I had to borrow confidence from these other areas and then use it over here, which people see now in doing these events with thousands of people, and even like in Indianapolis with a football stadium of 31,000 people this past year, people saying, oh, I wish I had confidence like that. It's like confidence is something you earn. Mm-hmm. It's not something that is magically gifted to you. It's something you develop and earn over time. So that'd be kind of my perspective on that.
So related to that, I've done a couple hundred media TV interviews, often live, and usually before that light turns on, I think to myself, today's the day I'm going to mess it up.
That's the word you use, mess.
Well, it's a family. I don't want to get one of those things, those bugs that says explicit or something like that. And same thing with whether it's a podcast or whether it's something else. You just, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, is today the day that I just, go haywire? So for everybody out there who's listening to Juan, and it's like, well, of course he has great confidence. He's always confident. That's his job. Do you have moments where you're similar to my expression of a lack of confidence, but then the light turns on, I'm good?
All the time. All the time. It is a constant battle against the voice in your head that tells you you're going to mess up, because all of us have it. I don't care how confident someone may seem or claim to be. 80% of our thoughts on a daily basis are negative. 80%. We are naturally inclined to look for what's wrong, and the first place we look is ourselves, what we're doing wrong, how we're messing up. So instead of taking that as a life sentence, as a determination, this is what most people do. They take that as a determination of, I guess this is who I am. I guess I'm terrible, because the truth is, if we were to talk to other people the way that we talk to ourselves, we'd probably have no friends. But some people, they'll take that as like, I guess this is who I am. I guess this is the difference is that confident people understand that they need to direct their energy effectively. What do I mean by that? Your focus and your reality is based on what you focus on. Your focus is directed by questions, but oftentimes we ask the wrong questions of where am I going to mess up? What if they don't like me? What if I forget what I'm going to say? all questions that are directing your focus just the wrong way. So whenever I'm feeling those moments, which happens all the time, like a few weeks ago when I was with executives at American Express, and I'm like, why are they going to want to hear from this child for their annual meeting? Why are they going to want to do that? As soon as that thought came up, I just replace it with a better question of how would I show up if I brought the best of myself? What do these people really need? What would it be like if this was the best presentation I ever gave? That changes the frame. It directs your energy to an outcome that you actually want, as opposed to directing an outcome that you actually don't want. I think that's the.
And I think that's a really important statement that you made. In just so everybody understands, we're all the same, and there's very few people, if anybody, that all the time is confident. It is something that you're always grappling with. It's like, oh, I'm going to go viral because I'm going to, forget what I'm talking about. And so I better not do it. But that's not the way I do the same dance. It's like, they want me there for a reason, and they appear to be smart people. So let's do the best we can. I had mentioned athletes. And since we're coming up on a lot of athletes trying to peak, do their best at the right time every 4 years, you've worked with Olympic athletes. Is there a different pathway in how do you get them to not only be confident, but to peak their confidence over a 2-week period every 4 years?
Yes. And this is something that can be applied to everything, which is that, like I mentioned before, confidence is made up of two things. It's made up of esteem and efficacy. Esteem is the way you see yourself. Efficacy is your ability. With Olympic athletes or any professional athletes or even actors that I'll work with, I'll see their efficacy or their ability needs to be in the top 1%. It needs to be at the highest level, and they understand that. You cannot just tell yourself affirmations in the mirror and you magically feel confident, especially when you're on the world stage. So I think in those moments, what's important is to focus on what are the skill sets that you need to build in order to give you unwavering proof that you are who you say you are. If you say that you're going to show up and you're going to crush and you're going to hit this time and you're going to do, okay, what is your preparation? How are you preparing? Because that preparation gives you proof, and that proof gives you confidence by looking back and saying, whoa, I did that. Just like when you give your first presentation, you're really nervous. You're probably sweating a bunch. You forget half of what you were going to say. But then the second one gets a little easier. But then the third one gets a little easier. The fifth one, the seventh. And after giving around 500 or so keynotes, audiences ranging from 5 people in a classroom to 30,000 in a football stadium, I have quite a bit of confidence when it comes to knowing that I can do a good job in a room of a few hundred or a few thousand because I've been there before. So you have to blaze the trail of the person that you would like to become. You have to blaze the trail of that person and saying, like, I'm going to build this skill set. So then when you go to run the marathon or you go to step on the world stage, you've been there before. You've done it. Like if you've run 10 marathons, you show up for number 11, you're not really questioning whether you can do it or not. You're questioning, will I hit my time? Will I hit a sub 3-hour marathon? Will I do that? That's a different conversation than can I do it in the first place?
Yeah. How do you, just thinking there, because, working with people who are, at this high level within what they're doing, confident, sure. But then, the best of the best, there comes a time when that confidence just drops, and it might drop at the wrong time. What are some, what would you tell someone, whether it's like someone in business, let's just say business for the sake of our audience, someone in business who, is just not felt it, really had those moments of just feeling super confident, feeling good, and then just feels like they just kind of lost it. Like, how do you get that fire back?
To see in the past, a great way to look ahead is also to look backwards, to see what has worked for us, that can work for us in the future. Sometimes when I'll work with a CEO or executive at a high level, oftentimes, sometimes they'll have a major deal that falls through. Mm-hmm. They'll have something that happens in their organization. They'll have something that really takes a hit on their confidence. And for them, it's not even developing a new set of skills. It's remembering the skills that they have. And it's getting back to the person that they know. Again, like we talked about, confidence in different contexts. There's a version of them that is wildly confident. And it's tapping into that person and then focusing on and giving energy to the next action of integrity, meaning integrity and alignment with the direction you're going. Because it's so easy to feel like we're stuck and not be in motion. It's so easy to feel like you're stuck and like, I can't move forward. You can. You're deciding to dwell. And even for a CEO or an executive that oftentimes are the high performers or the high achievers, and they say that they are so stressed, which oftentimes stress is the achiever word for fear. It's about getting into the moment that maybe they're not really well versed in. Maybe they have to have the uncomfortable conversation that they're not used to. And that is an opportunity, an area for them to grow. So I think it's twofold. It's number one, remembering who they are that got them there, and that you've already given yourself a track record and a laundry list of proof as to who you are. Undeniable. And sometimes I'll give a speech and it won't go that well. I have to think back first to all the ones that did. You had that. You were that. When Steph Curry drops 2 for 12 from 3, he has to remember when he dropped 50. He has to remember when he had the game where he was on fire and he was shooting from the logo. You got to remember. That's the first thing. And then the second is, what's the next level for me? That's the prompt. What's the next level for me? Oftentimes it's getting into a moment of fear. It's building the courage to build that relationship at that next level and say, I'm afraid of this. This makes me a little nervous. What's the next step of integrity? What's the next action of integrity here?
Yeah, it was on the internet, so it may or may not be true. But I saw something the other day that is a quote of Michael Jordan's, and said that 26 times he's missed the game-winning shot and the team lost. And he says, that's why I'm a success, because I think about that. And so whether or not that's, set that aside for a second, you just mentioned Steph Curry. One of my least favorite expressions that you hear in the business world is fake it till you make it. And the reason I dislike that is that feels like it's imposter syndrome. Like you're not that person, but if you act like that person, dress like that person, use business jargon, you're going to be that person. You're instead saying, instead of faking it, think about what you've done, imagine what you want to be, and there's the path forward. And it's not being an imposter, it's not being somebody else, it's being you, and that is something that you can control as opposed to, well, there's a cute business slogan.
Yes, 1,000%. And I also think it's with the understanding and the knowing and the acceptance that there's going to be people that don't like it. There's going to be people that don't like you. What keeps most of us from being the most confident version of ourselves is the judgment of other people. It's losing status, it's losing relationship, it's losing the position. And I find that so often people will turn themselves down in order to fit in with a certain group. It's called normative conformity. It's a phenomenon in psychology where we will literally dilute ourselves. We will water ourselves down in order to fit in with a certain group. This is why when you're in public and you see someone get a phone call, they get on the phone and they're like, I'll call you back in a second. It's like, are you at church? What's going on? You're just out in the pub. But they don't want to be judged. Here's the realization that we all need to have is that you will. People will judge you. People will make fun of you. People will not support your idea or your ambition or what you're trying to do. We need to accept that. And instead of feeling like we need to fake it till we make it, because Jeff, I totally agree, it is the worst strategy you could possibly use in order to fake it. Because what do confident people also understand? That they need to be relentlessly authentic. Confident people, from the CEOs to actors to Olympians to peak performers to everyday people, every single person that I've worked with, they all have that one trait where they are relentlessly themselves. And they've accepted the fact that people are going to judge them. People are going to talk poorly about them. People aren't going to agree with their ideas. So instead of trying to fake it till you make it, be authentic and understand that people are going to not like the authentic version of you. It's a conversation that often doesn't come up, but there's going to be people that don't like the real you. There's going to be people that don't agree with the real you, and that's okay, because you're not everyone's cup of tea. And maybe you're like a latte, and that's so much better than tea anyways, you know? So yes, I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
And of course, in our channel, coffee, tea, or energy drinks, they all, we love them all. So don't forget that.
Celsius, yes. Big fan.
We have choices.
Yeah, and if you think about it, if you do nothing but conform to fit in, to smooth all the rough edges, and to be that person that fits in, you're talking about ninth grade. And I don't think anybody goes, wow, that was the peak of my life. Right. I loved ninth grade. So
ninth grade.
it's worth the journey. And the thing is, I think we talked through a couple different tools here, that how people could just start thinking differently today and just define that path. One, for those who missed you at Connexus, where can they learn more about you and find some more ideas and insights, website, etc.? Where's the best place to learn more?
Yeah, website is Juan, Juan, Bendaña, BENDANA.com. That's where you can find out a little bit more about me. Send me a message, shoot me a message if you want. Say, hey, I listened to the podcast. It was awesome. I love getting those messages, either email or whatever it is. And then LinkedIn is probably where I hang out the most. LinkedIn, Instagram, it's all Juan Bendaña .com for the website, and then full name for LinkedIn and Instagram. That's where I probably hang out the most.
We should probably buy that phrase, fake it till you make it, and then just destroy it and change it to something else.
Buy the rights. I agree.
Okay, we'll check it after this. Thank you again for joining us, and thanks for speaking at the Connexus show recently.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by Nax and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.